back, keeping us under control. Yes, Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to have recognized that I have another meeting at 11 o'clock, and it's my mistake. I forgot about the time change, right? It's a meeting out of Ontario, and I'm hoping that they won't end up conflicting.
Thanks, Elaine. I hope that we're done well before that. And I know that Sonia has to leave us at 9:30 briefly, and will return when she's able. All right, if everyone's had a chance to review the agenda, any additions? Elaine?
Chair, I would move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, minutes from March 19th, 2020. On review, did anyone have any concerns or changes?
No concerns here. I'll move to accept.
All right, John is moving to accept the minutes as presented. Further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
No presentations today, so we'll move right into reports. Chief Blumhagen.
All right, so what I'll do is on the budget, there's lots of discussion around budgetary impacts of COVID-19. So I'll get into that, and then after my report, when we get into financials, budget to actual, I'll speak on that, where we're at for the 2019 budget to actuals after my report, if that is okay. But directly related to COVID-19 expenses to date, we've spent about $2,700 in equipment and supplies related to the pandemic. We have an order of personal protective equipment in with the province, which we will get billed for, but we don't know what that bill is going to be at this point in time. But to date, we're looking at about $2,700 in additional expenses. One of the things that is happening, though, is because of the number of court trials that have been canceled due to the pandemic, we had about 168 hours of court overtime in savings. So that's equates to about $8,000 for a 6-week period of time. So there are some cost savings in this, and because public's not out and about moving, our regular patrol operations we're managing those all right. We made a few shift adjustments, but overall, as far as finances go, it's not creating a significant impact on our budget. We also had one leave of absence that I did grant till September, which gives us about $25,000 savings in costs. And then we've reduced our, rescheduled some of our dispatchers and eliminated some flex hours through that rescheduling, which will give us about another $10,000 in cost savings in 2020. So to date, we're at about $43,000 in reduction in expenses, and that doesn't include any wages that we will be saving on as far as our alert position that started this month. Just in that realm of costs and COVID-19, I'm just wondering if there's any questions on that, because at the start of the pandemic, that was kind of a concern and a focus for everyone, but if there are any questions.
I know, Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. and I appreciate you asking. With regard to the staff leave of absence, that's directly related to COVID-19. That's not just a regular leave of absence that was requested, but it was requested because of COVID.
Yeah, we had done some shifting accommodations for the same employee before COVID-19 and anticipated some savings, but due to childcare issues and whatnot, this request came in very early, and initially I denied it just because I didn't know what our staffing levels would be. But as we developed our business continuity plan and looked at other arrangements, this worked out as a bit of a benefit to the service and avoided us having to potentially lay off other staff during the pandemic. So the request for personal reasons was directly related and had more to do with the schools being closed. But at the end of the day, it worked into the equation for us to avoid layoffs in other areas.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay. Professional standards, we had no complaints in March. As far as policy, we did issue 3 service directives. 2 of them were in direct correlation to, or sorry, 1 of them was in direct correlation to COVID-19. And then we created 1 service directive to ensure that all members are using their in-car video recording systems. That is something they should be doing regardless of the pandemic. And then we released some direction on unendorsed warrants that we've been seeking from the province. The province gave us, because of COVID-19, some latitude on releases for unendorsed warrants. So the interim guidance is good because that will probably carry forward into the future past the pandemic and assist us and help us in reducing some of our guarding costs as well. So I've spoken about that issue before, and we are seeing some headway. As far as operational activities, our calls for service are down, which is consistent throughout the province. We are seeing some noted activities in areas of vehicle thefts, commercial break and enters. Not huge increases. We've been proactive on that end, increasing our property checks and those types of tasks for our members. So they are still out there and probably deterring some of those crimes that are definitely on the increase in other areas. And then we are seeing activities in the areas of domestic violence and mental health complaints. Some of our front counter police information checks are down, but we are still maintaining. We're one of just a couple of police services in the province that are still providing that service. And the reason I have chosen to continue that service is if people need these checks for an employment purpose, we don't want to hinder anybody's opportunity to maintain employment in these times. So we will do that, or for volunteers that are volunteering in the health sector and providing resources in support of the efforts to reduce the effects of the pandemic. So we will continue to do those, and just our criteria has changed. However, there's not a lot of volunteer activities going on, so those numbers have been substantially reduced just because of that. As far as operational activities, we did have a couple break and enters to business, like I said. Some of the scams that have been going on. So we have done a number of press releases to the public, just advising some additional security measures that they can take if they're becoming victims. Our community liaison and SRO, our SRO of course hasn't been in the schools, so they've been doing proactive activities They have visited all of our businesses that are open and just reviewing security procedures for alarms and just providing some assurances to them that we are here and available if they have questions or concerns in any area. And that was actually very well received by the business community. And then in March, SCAN, Safe Communities and Neighborhoods, has been working with us for quite some time on a residence that was of concern to the public as far as criminal activities. And that business, the SCAN unit did obtain a order to shut down the property for 90 days. And at the end of the 90 days, we will see if the owner decides to inhabit that residence. As far as training, we did get in a little bit of training before everything shut down. So we did have 3 members attend an auto theft seminar in Red Deer. 3 of our junior members went for some forensic identification familiarization hosted by Red Deer IDENT section. And we hired 2 new casuals, but due to our ability to, because most of the training programs have been suspended, they aren't able to get our records management system training. So we have suspended that for the time being, although we may utilize them in other capacities if our resources are diminished at any time. And then we also cross-trained 12 of our members to do basic dispatch functions. If one of our dispatchers goes down and we need to fill that space for a few hours, we can do that through a number of our members. Through my leadership activities, as you can see, going through it, it was primarily COVID-19 focused. There was meetings pretty much daily for the first 3 weeks. Those meetings are starting to occur less frequently on more of a once or twice a week, but I continue to partake in the City Emergency Command Center meetings, the Provincial Operations Center meeting, and the Alberta Association of Chiefs meetings. So there's usually half a dozen meetings a week with those 3 entities. And with our fleet, we're still waiting our SRO vehicle, and one member did back into a garbage bin while doing property checks and caused about $2,700 damage to the vehicle. So we have not got that repaired yet, but we'll assess that. That vehicle is actually due to be removed from our fleet next year, and we may choose not to fix it at the end of the day. We will see. Facility, mentioned about our cleaning supplies, and we have set up our emergency command center if the city wishes to move command center operations over to the police facility. That is all set up, and IT is assisted in getting all the phones and IT necessities in place. In human resources, we did have 1 member quarantined for COVID-19 after travel, and ended up that was a confirmed case, but that member has recovered and has returned to work with no concerns. We're dealing with concerns daily on people that have some signs that require testing. The testing for emergency services members was opened up about a week ago, and the turnaround times for testing are actually quite good. From the day of going in, you take a couple hours before you're actually given an appointment for testing, and within 24 to 48 hours, you have a turnaround time. If the tests come back as negative, because we are in emergency services, those people are not staying in self-isolation for 10 days. They are returning to work. And once they're healthy, if they're non-related signs, then they will just utilize regular sick days. And then we had with the pandemic and oversight for the organization to ensure easy transition, I did put Sergeant Brian Zenz, our recently appointed organizational support sergeant, into the active temporary acting staff sergeant to give him some positional authorities, but also transfer of command if need be is there. Also, if the emergency command center for the city went to a more active state, then my focus would be in that realm, and we would have the operational oversight through that staff sergeant position. That's at minimal cost to our budget, and actually those wages were already included in our 2020 budget. And then also in June, we had planned on moving our support team leader to a manager position. And due to the abundance of responsibilities in the HR realm, planning phases, and oversight of our support team, I bumped that promotion up to April 1st. There is about a $1,100 impact to the budget on that, but I think it was well worth it to make that switch early. And that is about it for my report. And at the end of, actually, March 31st was the end of our one of our third-party criminal record check contracts, and we are still working with that company. There is some potential that we may be able to revive that contract a little bit. So we are keeping the contract open, although we won't be experiencing any revenues in the near future on that. And that is my report.
Any questions for the chief?
No,
Nope.
All right. SRO report is provided in the package. Not a lot happened in the month of March, as you can see. Any questions on review of that?
Nope.
no.
So it's good. The chief has got the SRO position moved into other responsibilities during this time.
And I'll just confirm with Sonia, we did send them out to just check on the schools and the staff that were present. And I'm hoping you had a visit or two at your school. And just wondering if there's value to that, or whether we should have the SRO just focus elsewhere.
I think the value of that was good in the first week, but I think I'm the only school that has staff still coming in. JS, very vacant. They were not too bad yesterday. Lacombe Junior has only 3 people coming in. Everyone's working from home. The high schools, most are working from home. So probably you could reallocate his time in a different way. And we know that we can get a hold of him if we need to.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, move on to item 5.2, actual to budget for March 2020. So this was something I've asked Lauren to just put back into our reporting. We haven't really seen, just as we've been revising our number report, we haven't really seen too much. And the value of this report is always marginal because we can't, it's always a flow, but at least it gives us a bit of an idea and a reminder of our numbers. Lauren, I don't know if there's anything that you necessarily wanted to draw to attention. I just wanted it available for the board to have in their package to review.
Other than the areas that I talked about already, everything else is in alignment. Actually, in many of the areas on the report, like I said, training, overtime are actually lower than what we would normally see. So right now we should be at about 25% of the spending. However, a lot of our billing hasn't gone out. But in most areas of the budget, we're actually spending less or trending favorably. to be under at the end of the year, but Q1 is a little bit hard to analyze.
One point, just I'm seeing the line 2.134 with this, no, excuse me, 2.131, which is payroll benefits, is a little bit in advance of 25%. But if I recall from last year, that's normal because the stat payouts that happen in January.
Yeah, and also because of some of the overtime in December that we had for our homicide
Right.
investigation, that actually wasn't paid out till January. So some of those items, there is some carryover. But yeah, some of the benefits, there were some payouts for stat time, those types of things.
Any other questions for Lauren on the 2020?
Not here.
Nope.
Thanks for providing it.
Actual to budget 2019, we did review this last meeting. Any changes, Lauren, or was it just more for information?
Actually, there was some changes. So we received the last month, they reported a net deficit of $58,009. And then I just received 2 days ago from finance, when they worked their final numbers, that went up by $10,000 to a deficit of $68,239. So on this item, I did check to say what was the $10,000 difference within the month and why wasn't that identified earlier. And what had happened with that is they did an adjustment for sick time, the sick time bank. So they allot whatever is in the total sick bank pool for the service has dollars attached to it. So that sick bank pool of money did go up, or the number of hours went up in the bank. So they have to allocate dollars to ensure they're in place to pay out any of those sick time requests. So that's what caused that $10,000. So I understand. Usually it's money in, money out because people are being paid their wages, but the city still has to allocate funds to that entire pool of hours that's available for use.
So the sick time gets, if you don't use it, you can accumulate it?
So everybody has, and there's a bit of history on this. Some members have were grandfathered. Everybody in the service basically gets a day a month into the bank. And depending on whether you use that time or not, the banks can build. So whatever the total accumulation of hours is. So if I don't take a sick day for a year, my bank will go to a maximum of 96 hours. Somebody on shift work would be 120 or 144 hours in their bank. For anybody that was hired after, I think, 2013, those would be their maximums, but some of our employees were hired before that, so they have hundreds of hours in their banks. I guess on one hand, that's a good thing, because if the banks aren't used, that dollar amount would be lower. So it would be indicative that in our strategic plan, we did want to reduce our sick time hours, and I haven't done a full dig into that, but I'm thinking this number might be reflective that our sick time used hours are coming down. But it doesn't look good on our deficit.
No, it's just, but sometimes the payroll benefits from the private sector is kind of stunning, really,
Yes,
and generous.
yes.
Any other questions for the chief on the 2019 year end?
The only other statements I can make on this before maybe we finalize the discussion is So the $68,239 deficit is part of the auditor's number. So that's going to be the final audited deficit for the service. Is there a need to send any correspondence back to the city to discuss how they manage or deal with that deficit and with the city budget overall?
I guess we also haven't heard from the city either, so I don't know whether, do we initiate how are we handling this budget deficit, or is it what it is?
I don't think it would. At the end of the day, we're gonna, whatever. So when we do the audit, of course, there are other departments that may have deficits or surpluses or whatever the case may be. Of course, we can handle that internally quite easily. Because the police budget is kind of a separate budget, then we have to kind of look at it a little differently. Invariably, at the end of the day, I don't know how much is in our reserves at the moment, police reserves. Is that enough to cover the deficit or no?
No. We currently have $50,000 in our police reserve, operational reserves. Our capital reserves are different, but operational reserves are currently $50,000.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, I don't know what will happen. Obviously, we're going to cover the deficit, but I think what will happen is when we do our supplementary assessment, it always comes down in the spring, we always, knock on wood, invariably have more funds that come in so that we can cover off deficits. I don't know what that number is going to be like, but I suspect what will probably happen is that some monies will be taken from the police reserve, and then other monies will come from somewhere else to cover this off. Because I don't want to see the police reserve get emptied on this, and I don't think it will be. But I think it wouldn't hurt if we said to the city, we understand there's a deficit, we understand we have some money in reserves. We as a commission are suggesting that we provide 20,000, 30,000 from the police reserves to offset that deficit. And, we'd like to hold on to some monies in our reserve fund. I don't know. I don't think it would hurt to do that. Invariably, the city will, we'll cover it off. We'll figure it out. It's just what, maybe it wouldn't hurt if we gave a suggestion.
And I do want to bring to the attention of everyone that when we look at our expenses, we're actually 31,000 under on our expenses. So when we're given our operating dollars, we did run actually under budget when we look into that line. What's throwing us off is our revenues. So we experienced $100,000 less in revenues than what we had hoped for. And I think we'll have this struggle definitely this year with where our revenues are going to fall out. But from my perspective, once again, is in managing those expenses and the operational costs, everything is in alignment or under. It's managing those revenues and the reliance on the revenues coming in. So that might lead to a bigger discussion come budget time on what that actually looks like. So I don't necessarily disagree with transferring the 50,000 operational reserve to offset the deficit, because in some ways that's what it's for. But we're not offsetting our expenses, we're actually offsetting our revenues, which is somewhat problematic.
So
That's where I struggle with it somewhat.
I guess it does give us that lead in to have what I would suggest is that I request a meeting to review the fact of it, review the fact of our revenues in the budget, and come up with a plan for how we're going to present our budget for 2021. So have it as an opening. So what I propose is that I'll write a letter. I guess the question is I address it to council, but also to finance to request a meeting to just review the way that we've dealt with these numbers historically and propose a better system.
And it might be worth just having a meeting with finance and the CAO as far as how we deal with these lines, how they're showing. Other municipalities use other ways of reflecting the revenues, but they aren't as specific as the way we have ours broken down, that they are allotted so many dollars in revenues, period, without being defined. And that's what we work with the end. So the cities or the revenues in essence just come from the city, but aren't attached to any line. So different trains of thought on that, but I think that would, before finalizing, we've already presented our 3-year budget, including 2021 and 22. Those definitely have to be readjusted because of many circumstances. So before going into budget submissions for 2021, we should probably have that type of meeting, I think would be in order.
Okay, so that will be on my to-do list as chair to draft that letter and send it. So I think maybe from the sounds of it, I'll send it to the attention of the CEO and to finance, perhaps with the CC to council. Just so that they're, yeah, just so that they're aware that we're actively taking some steps to try to deal with a better ongoing system.
So do you want to send a letter in relation to the deficit even prior to that, or all encompassing? Do we want to make comment on the deficit?
I don't think that we should be proposing the solution at this point until we actually have the discussion on how to remedy it so that it can be more of a group effort on the solution. You know, the police reserve has its value and it's for this type of situation, but it does mean that we have to replenish it.
Yes.
And so that I think that the idea of replenishing the reserve in my mind has a lot to do with our revenues.
And I think actually the CAO or finance may have some ideas on that, and it's not specific to the police budget, but it's in relation to all departments. So that you can smooth out the curve because this does happen under, over, or whatever, so transferring surpluses or budgeting for deficits. So I think they do have some information around that, and that's, I think, some of the value that would also come from a meeting.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the commission?
Not at this time.
Not at this time either.
Sounds good to me.
Alrighty. Public Complaints Director, the report is in the package. No activity at all, so everybody seems to be happy. Chair report. Since the last meeting, my reports included, I had meetings, gotta find my, there it is, sorry. Meeting with Chief Bloomhagen March 25th and a telephone meeting with Chief Bloomhagen in preparation for the meeting, for today's meeting, reviewing the agenda. Any questions? Councillor Connick?
Nope.
Yeah, my report is there, looks good.
All right, so we are Vice Chair Judy you're just on the list. I don't think you were scheduled to have to report, but
Nothing to report, thank you.
Could I
Alright.
ask Ruben a question?
go ahead, John.
No.
Ruben, I was just wondering on that respectful workplace policy, at the beginning it shows who it applies to, but it doesn't show that it applies to city council per se. Is there a reason for that?
No, it applies to all of us as well. We just wanted to kind of, that plus is more around like committee meetings and so forth. Other committees other than this committee, like a lot of them aren't meeting, for example. But it is an overarching, like if you sit in this council chamber, for example, you'll see how everything is spaced out here and so forth. It really applies to everybody, but the intent of that was really to just say to other committees that, for example, there's a lot of other committees that aren't even meeting at all anymore, for example. So just as a safety precaution.
Thank you.
And I would add just the council does have their own council code of conduct policy that governs them.
Thanks, Ross. All right, I'll take a motion to accept reports from the floor. Elaine,
So moved.
further discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Favor, yes.
Favor,
Yes,
All right, so moved. Ross, just for the record, I think for the last three motions, Sonia hasn't been available, or just noting hers abstaining.
I'll mark them carried rather than unanimously.
Okay. All right, moving on to old business. This next one does need Sonia, so I'm going to take 6.1 and just table it for now. Old business is policy manual. From last meeting, John was going to take a peek at this. And John, I've seen your email, but I'll let you maybe report on your findings. And Elaine, I know you were going to also take a look at it.
Okay. I believe this is covered in the email. I reviewed what we have in our policy manual versus the Edmonton Police Commission having a separate policy. And my recommendation would be at this time that we do not need to add to our policy manual regarding record management, that it's already covered.
Thanks for looking into that, John. So again, policy manual is just an annual review. And Elaine, I know that you were going to take some time and review it. Did you have any comments for the commission?
I have been examining policy and I've been looking at it in sort of two respects. So I've been looking at the content and then I've been looking at how it's written. I have yet to find anything in the content that concerns me. When I look at how it's written, there are some just sort of little things that I would consider might make improvements upon the policy manual, but I know that it is reviewed annually and this is not the time, and I will continue to do that and save it up for our annual review.
Thanks, Elaine. So I think at this point we can, I think, just note that our annual requirement to review the policy manual has been completed. Ross, if I can just ask some guidance from you, do we need to make a motion for that, or is that just
I think that's good. A motion is good. It's a requirement in your to review it every year in your policy manual itself. So if someone would make a motion, that would be wonderful, just to accept the policy manual as presented or amended, either way.
all right? Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion as presented.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Yes.
Yep.
in
Okay.
favor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Next then is item 6.3, which is the annual report presented for approval. I think had a draft sent, a draft was available to us last meeting. And then this is the final version.
Yes. So on, it was presented last meeting, and Chair Gish found a couple of typos that were corrected and presented in this report that you have in your current package. One of the bigger areas that was changed was on operational highlights. I don't actually have a page number reference. There's a couple of graphs, and actually the year 2019 wasn't included in there, so we just made some fixes there. So those were corrected, but they were more typing errors. None of the content or information or statistics changed.
There's still, it says 218 here. Again, it's just a little typo.
Can go back to that because I know I struggled with it. Okay, so thank you.
And I did have one more question on the graphs previous to that too, Lauren.
Well, just, do you know where he's at with the
Yeah,
18?
so
Okay.
I got the changes right. It didn't hold on the one spot on collision breakdowns. It says 2000 on the bottom of the graph. It says 2017, 2018, 2018. So I just need to get that.
Oh, yeah, I see. Sorry, Ruben, go ahead
Thanks, Ruben.
with the next.
Yeah, and then when I was reading it, on the graphs, the previous talks about one of, has to do with property crime, and it says PCP obtained by, what, can you, I was just, I didn't know what that meant.
Oh, possession of stolen property obtained by crime is what that stands for.
Okay. So when you present the council, just say that. Because the council, some of them are gonna ask, well, because I was wondering, what does he mean?
I'll see if I didn't enter that, so we'll see if we can actually make that smaller.
Otherwise, it looked good to me otherwise.
Okay.
Any other comments or thoughts on the annual report?
None here.
I would.
I did have one other, just on the awards and recognition. I was just trying to, so first, in this bunch of constables there to advance to second class, first class. Can you just, I was just trying to picture, so is fourth class the highest and first class the lowest, or is that, how does that work?
Recruit constable or fifth class is the lowest.
Okay,
And then it goes up to fourth class, and first class is traditionally the highest, but then you do have a senior level 1 and a senior level 2 above that. So first class is the highest for regular constables, but after 8 years, you can be moved to a senior level 1, and then 12 years a senior level 2.
okay, thanks.
All right, barring further questions, I'd accept a motion to accept the 2019 annual report with the small revisions noted today.
I'll move that, Edith.
Edie? Anything further? All in favor?
Yes,
Yep.
Carried.
So with that item being carried, I thought we were on the agenda to present this to council at one point in time, but I'm not sure that we still are.
There's a requirement to certainly provide it to council. In the past. What we've done is included in their mailbox for the next council agenda, and that's met that requirement. Certainly your option if you'd like to present it to councils in person. I think we might have done that last year, as I recall.
We did, and we were scheduled to go before council this year, but I don't see it on the schedule anymore. So I know we aren't for the 27th of April, but I think in the bylaws it does say that we will present in the spring, and then we present in at budget time as well in the fall. So I'm not.
I think it's in our policy manual. I'll have to have a look at that and schedule you in.
And I'd leave that to the discretion of the chair on whether sending the report suffices or whether rather have it in person or just wait for an invite from council.
My thought would be that we should present it and wait for an invite, just based on the COVID, and I suspect just a reduction of personal appearances. There's some value in attending, just to at least be open to questions, but
So should we send some correspondence to council to accept the annual report as information, but if they so wish to review it in person, that we're open to that invitation?
yes.
Okay. So I will make the identified corrections and forward that to Ross to forward to council. And then once that has been done, then we'll post it to our websites, the commission website and the police service website.
Okay, so on that, I can draft a letter and send it, Ross, so that you got it.
I can send you a draft.
Okay, sounds good. Excellent. All right, you guys, we're moving along. We still have item 6.1 tabled until Sonia's able to return to the meeting. New business, we do have our next meeting, May 21st. How's that looking in everyone's schedule? These meetings are important. We post them annually because it's a requirement that the public is clearly aware, so they're not easily changed. What I can assume is that we will continue with this process for the May 21st meeting unless we hear otherwise. And so far I'm feeling like it's so good. I don't know how other people are thinking. Any thoughts on the format of our attendance?
No, it works out well for me.
Okay. It's definitely working better than just the phone in that we had last time. Next, we still need to do an update of our commission photo, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon unless we do a collage of face shots. So we'll just keep this on our agenda, and when we are able to all meet and stand within 2 inches of each other again, we can do a new photo. We have some items for information. Included in the package was the AAPG winter newsletter. There was the conference that was supposed to happen in April has been postponed until September. And so far Elaine and Brad and I are still scheduled to attend. If that date opens up some interest from another commission member, maybe let us know. I did want to just point out the resources that the AAPG has available under their website. They have it in their it's in the letter, but there are some interesting things if you were just thinking about doing some more looking or snooping. But there's a resources tab and a communications tab that AAPG has available for us. So just for your attention, especially when we're still nowhere close to getting the Attorney General's online course available to us from the looks of it. COVID-19 preparedness update.
Sorry, on,
Oh, yeah.
with Solgen,
Mhm.
there was that correspondence, email correspondence and voicemail message.
Yes.
Was everybody aware that we had made contact with?
Thanks,
Solgen?
Lauren. Yeah, no, I'll put that on the record is, since our last meeting, we knew that Elaine had contacted Karen Popplestone. Brad had reached out to her. Lauren reached out and tried to get to some other people as well, but basically the chief received an email message or voicemail message from Karen Popplestone advising that she did tell Brad this, which we knew, but they're having some contract matters they are trying to work through, and as a result, she cannot register anyone for training. So we are just in a holding pattern on that. It's not the end of the day, it's just a really informative program for Brad and Elaine to go through as new members, and even for us as old members, just as a reminder, which might be where using the AAPG resources might be a good way to just do some of your own work to read through it, because essentially that Attorney General online program is just, here's some forced reading and helps to guide you through it. Judy, any comments on that?
Just so my understanding, then you're saying that we won't be able to move forward with our for them taking the course? Is that my understanding you're saying?
I think Karen Popplestone in her voicemail message has basically told us to stop bugging her. When she's ready, she'll let us know. I do tend to interpret things my way, but that's the message. Elaine, yes, I see you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I did actually receive a reply from Karen Popplestone with regard to training and a brief explanation. So since she was contacted on my behalf by Ross on January 7th, I have finally received some communication from her.
Any difference in the message there, Elaine?
No.
Okay. All right. So again, we're still on information on the agenda, item 8.3, COVID preparedness update. I know, Chief, you've talked to us a little bit about what you're up to in the report. Anything further that you feel we need to know?
Things are starting to settle down a little bit as far as the work on the front end of this, just developing our business continuity plan. The city's done this, but we also did one for the service, and we used the template from the Provincial Operations Center and Alberta Emergency Management Agency. But just in developing that, and that was part of my reasoning for putting in the staff sergeant position and moving our support team leader into a management position, was we developed a manual that is bigger than the commission policy manual in a very short period of time, but that developed procedures on how we operate. We did inspections of the office for to ensure that we're in compliance and to put our staff fears to rest on their possibility of exposure. But there is a substantial amount of work that was a team effort, and our folks did very good at bringing it all together. So in a regular disaster, you can see the fire coming or the water rising or the shots being fired. But with this pandemic, it's you don't know which direction it's coming from or how it's going to affect you, and it's pretty slow moving. So there's a lot of activity at the start, and now we're into that monitoring stage, which is, I think, really good, waiting for government decisions to come out. And even with government, when they put out their orders, they didn't put any teeth behind them for us to actually enforce a lot of these orders. So there's expectations on police to enforce various items, but they hadn't actually done all of the legislative changes to support what they were saying to the public. So a lot of those changes have happened. Our complaints in relation to social distancing or self-isolation have been minimal, but we are definitely active in the conversations and very much in the know of what is happening around us. So I think this has actually been an excellent exercise. When we talk about our strategic plan, it speaks to emergency management and preparedness. So this, without it being a very quick and rapid incident, it is slow moving enough that our folks get exposure to all of the elements that sometimes we would have to develop in a very short period of time. So it works well in our strategic plan in meeting some of those goals. So we'll look at the positives of some of this.
You're right, though. It is a good exercise in, are we ready and are our plans sufficient?
Right. And unless people live it, they don't really appreciate some of the planning phases or things that you need to consider. And everybody's done very well. And even from the city perspective and the city emergency command center, I think it's been a great experience for the city overall in emergency management.
I'm just grateful for the fact we never, and I don't think we'll get there to the state where you see in Europe, where complete lockdowns and police patrolling the streets, and that would change the dynamic completely. But thankfully, we never got there.
Yeah, and there's
nor will we, I don't think.
There's a lot of discussion on the onset about going to a local state of emergency, and the municipality chose not to, and I strongly support that decision because there wasn't the need, and we haven't elevated to have that need. So that's been very positive. So it's been managed well on all levels, and to avoid that local state of emergency, activating the emergency command center helped because there may be some emergency funds that pay for some of our expenses through this without having to go to that state or local emergency. So I think the community overall is doing well with it.
Does that generate any questions at all for the chief?
No.
Thanks, Lauren. So we do as well have in our packages for information just the updated respectful workplace policy. And so as a commission, this is also part of, we are governed by it. Ruben, beyond the discussion we've had already, there was there anything in particular that the update was addressed that you're aware of that we should be keeping in mind?
No, I don't think so.
For members' information, I would just say in your member binders, the big fat one, there was already a policy as an appendix to the policy manual, and this would replace that, I believe.
Yeah, and where this really comes from is the occupational health and safety regulations included some of the items around bullying and respectful workplace. And within those regulations, they included commissions and boards and volunteers. So the city, in essence, needed to build it into their policies as well. So it was, there's many changes with OH&S and their regulations. So this is one of them. And through the managers meeting with the city, it wasn't necessarily recognized that while it was included, recognized that boards and groups were included in the policy, but it wasn't recognized that maybe commission members and volunteers should be advised that this exists. So I'm glad to see it in the package and that everybody is aware of the policy.
Okay. So again, we haven't had Sonia join us back yet, just in terms of just following up with the chief evaluation.
No, I've been back. I've been back for a long time.
Oh, I apologize, Sonia, I didn't see
Sorry.
you. So what we've got in old business, but we're also down into in camera, is just having the commission approve the final letter to the chief, Sonia.
So since we are live streaming, then, you know, once we have a motion to go in camera, just a reminder that Tim will disconnect that. And then we'll maybe have a couple minutes, up to the chair, of course, up to a couple minutes break if anybody needs it.
Okay.
Can I just ask one question? Because I just came in at the tail end of the rescheduled AGM. That date now would work for me. Do you know if they're opening registrations again to allow new registrations for the September date? Or for the, I mean, the AAPG conference? And if no one has an answer, I'll just email this Victoria myself and see if they'll still accept registrations, because that September 18, 19 date now will work better than the April date did.
Okay.
And still have enough room on our budget to allow another member to go off of our commission.
Right, we'll get the discount for 4 members then.
As well. I can't see, they're not saying it's not open, Sonia, and I would expect that they would have room to have those numbers fluctuate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll contact Victoria, see if we can do another registration, and then Ross, are you saying then we would get to the discount?
Yes, with 4 members going.
Okay, and do you think then we have enough of a budget in our PD fund to allow one more member to go from commission? Because I certainly don't need to, I just know the date would likely work now.
Where is our budget for commissions? The cost of actually attending the conference isn't such a big deal. I think it's just more the cost of the hotel rooms and travel.
Then you can jump in the car with me, Corey.
Exactly. Exactly. So really won't cost anything extra, Sonia.
Sounds good to me. Plan made.
Okay, I think we can make it work.
Sounds good. Great. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
And if I can make a suggestion, Corey, with regards to the expenses, Sonia, graciously offering carpooling, etc. When we were supposed to go with victim services to our victim services Banff conference, a lot of times the actual mileage, you basically are making money because of the city of Lacomb's amount that they've set per kilometer. So what we had done is we actually set a flat rate of what really was more than enough gracious for the mileage. So just a suggestion there for our budget if we don't have as much money.
Thanks, Judy.
You're welcome.
All right, I do believe then we have a need to go in camera just to complete this item. If I can have a motion, please.
So moved.
Ruben, all in favor to go in camera?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.